Okay, good evening, everyone. Sorry we're late. My fault. Senator Casey and Wyden were here, and I'm happy to be joined by them. And I want to thank them for their tireless efforts to protect consumers and fight for the middle class. Now, over the course of the 2016 campaign, we heard from candidate Trump time and time again that he'd be tough on Wall Street. He held rallies lambasting elites, criticizing bankers and hedge fund managers. He said, quote, "I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder. Wall Street has caused tremendous problems for us." That is candidate Trump. So what does President Trump do when he takes office? Let's go to the tape.
The hedge fund managers, the Wall Street investors, it's the powerful protecting only the powerful. I'm fighting for you.
But he's already started attacking the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which holds powerful people accountable when they rip you off. That's a broken promise.
When you cast that ballot, just picture a Wall Street boardroom filled with the special interests and imagine the look on their faces when you tell them you're fired.
But unfortunately, he lied. His chief financial advisor comes from Goldman Sachs, and his cabinet is filled with billionaires and Wall Street insiders. Another broken promise.
I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder. Wall Street has caused tremendous problems for us.
Instead of cracking down on Wall Street, he's rolling over. That's a broken promise. I'm going to do what's right for the people, and I'm going to do what's right for the country, not for a Wall Street firm.
But he's already dismantling rules that will protect your retirement savings from unethical investors. That's a broken promise.
Now, as you just saw, candidate Trump told America, when you cast that ballot, just picture a Wall Street boardroom filled with special interests and imagine the look on their face when you tell them you're fired. But President Trump told Steve Mnuchin, a hedge fund manager and a Wall Street insider with decades of experience in that boardroom, "You're hired as my Treasury Secretary." That is a broken promise. Candidate Trump told America in 2015 that, quote, "the hedge fund guys are getting away with murder." But with one of his first executive orders, President Trump started the process to roll back Wall Street reform, trying to undo protections we put in place after the financial crisis to eliminate the threat of banks being too big to fail and ensure that systematically risky institutions like AIG could no longer cripple the entire financial system. And candidate Trump promised to fight for the American worker and middle-class families. But now he wants to eviscerate the one agency that sticks up for consumers when they're being ripped off by payday lenders, debt collectors, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. A president who was a true champion for working America would never even consider unwinding protections that were designed to make our financial system more secure and protect hardworking Americans from the risky practices of Wall Street. Unfortunately, President Trump is already proving he is not that champion by breaking key promises to stand up to Wall Street and fight for the middle class, the working class. Senator Wyden.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. And the leader has said it very well. And look, the public is obviously getting used to broken promises. But you'd think a guy who personally embraced a rule named after himself would want to stick to it for a while. That has not been the case with the Mnuchin rule. Let me quote specifically what Steve Mnuchin said. He said, and I quote, "Any reductions we have in upper income taxes would be offset by less deductions. So there would be no absolute tax cut for the upper class. The fact of the matter is that already that promise from Steve Mnuchin is on the ropes. If you look at what the Trump tax plan is all about, if you look at what Republicans have advocated in the past with respect to the Affordable Care Act, what you see is their tax legislation is a Trojan horse to come up with new tax breaks for the most fortunate. And I think that's why we wanted to gather today to make sure that the word got out that we have a different set of priorities. Our priorities are twofold. One, we're focused on working families. Two, we keep our word. And I want to turn this over to Senator Casey, and I appreciate that Senator Schumer asked me to join.
I was struck by that video. I never saw the juxtaposition of those promises with what's happened since. I was also struck when we went back today and looked at what some of the first words that we heard from Steve Mnuchin when he was nominated to be Treasury Secretary way back at the end of November, where he says the following. This is in a headline in November 30th, headline in Politico, quote, Dodd-Frank will be targeted, Mnuchin says. That's the legislation that helped us deal with the circumstances that the country faced after the crash and after and just prior to the Great Recession, which by one estimate cost the country $19 trillion in household wealth and something like 8.7 million jobs. It's remarkable that in light of that history, that he would appoint someone whose almost their first words, or at least back in November, were that he was going to go right at Dodd-Frank. And then, of course, the president, with his executive order, put him in charge of coming up with a plan to do just that. What we should expect from a public servant, especially one who would be in charge of the Treasury Department, such a substantial responsibility, we would hope that we would have someone who would be on the side of people that have lived through some of those nightmares that we saw in 2008 and 9 and going forward. Here's a report from a television station in Pittsburgh, WTAE, an investigative report. The headline on the text of the report is, Trump pick for Treasury Secretary foreclosed on hundreds of homeowners in western Pennsylvania. It focuses in particular on Nellie Malinek. She's from Westmoreland County, just east of Pittsburgh. Here's what Nellie says. Wait, let me just give you the background. Nellie and her husband, Nellie, in this case, there was a mortgage in place, but Nellie then lost her husband to cancer. She lost her son to an overdose, and then she lost her home to One West Bank, headed by Mr. Mnuchin. Here's the most important part, though, is about what she had asked for. She asked One West to help her keep the house by adjusting her payment, but she said the bank refused and then foreclosed on her. Here's what Nellie says, quote, they should have worked with me to meet a payment that I could make. She filed for bankruptcy, but even then could not save her house. She said it caused her, quote, a lot of depression, unquote. And then the report goes on to talk about those hundreds and hundreds of foreclosures. I say that because there was a dispute on the record between what Mr. Mnuchin said about mortgage foreclosures and mortgage modifications. Of course, a modification's a lot better circumstance for a homeowner. But just coming into the Treasury Secretary job with that kind of a record causes me great concern, and it's one of several reasons why I'll vote against his confirmation. But when you step back and put it in the context of this administration, in those promises that you saw by candidate Donald Trump as opposed to the actions of President Donald Trump, I think the country is justifiably concerned, and I think it's our job to hold both the Treasury Secretary, were he to be confirmed, and the President accountable.
Thank you, my colleague. Just one other point while we're talking about broken promises. Candidate Trump campaigned as a friend of the working people. He is nominated for Labor Secretary, someone who is so anti-working people that it's appalling. Tonight, there's even consternation on the Republican side about his moving forward, and I would urge President Trump to withdraw the nomination of Mr. Puzder for Labor Secretary as well. Questions to any of us? Yes.
Sure. Can I ask a question about one of President Trump's employees, Michael Flynn, has come under fire for some controversy about whether or not he spoke to the ambassador to Russia about sanctions. Sean Spicer says that President Trump is evaluating the situation. Do you agree with Leader Pelosi that President Trump should fire Michael Flynn, or what role does Congress have in investigating?
Okay, well, first, we have asked for and demand an independent investigation of what Flynn's discussions were with the Russian ambassador and all others, and we'll be saying more about that soon. Second, his security clearance ought to be withdrawn until that independent investigation is completed, and if he has violated any law or ethical precept, he ought to be fired.
Democrats yet decided on their strategy for nominations going far beyond the current batch. You guys look looking to use up all 30 hours going forward again?
Well, as we've said, we feel we have done the country a service by exposing these nominees for who they are in terms of their conflicts of interest, in terms of their views, which are contrary to what the candidate Trump said, and in terms of their not cleaning, they don't represent average Americans. They represent a whole bunch of billionaires. And for the Big Eight, we're going to give them full scrutiny, and there may be others we give full scrutiny to as well. Yes.
Senator Schumer, can you comment on Senator Elizabeth Warren's letter that she sent this morning regarding Andy Puzder? Is that
I haven't seen her letter, so I couldn't comment on it. I've said what I've had to say about Puzder the last few times. Yes.
Sir, can you talk a little bit about Prime Minister Menendez? Are you going to be meeting with him?
I am going to be meeting with him both with a group of senators and privately.
Senator, have you seen the pictures that arose from some of the members of Mar-a-Lago who were nearby the dinner table where Donald Trump was reacting to the missile test by North Korea?
Yeah.
What do you make of the fact that that was addressed in such a
Open.
public?
I'd say Donald Trump talks about making America secure. Security begins at home. He never should have had such a sensitive discussion in such a public place.
Thanks, Senator. Regarding North Korea and their missile test last week, what sort of options do you see for Congress moving forward to exercise oversight of the Trump administration?
Well, look, to me, first, I don't know if they've done it today, but as of yesterday, while it was very good that the president issued a statement with the president of Japan, he should do the same with South Korea, who is more in the firing line of North Korea than any other country. And second, we need to increase pressure on China. China is the key to the North Korea problem. They control 90% of the exports and imports, and if China were really tough with North Korea, they'd have to stop. Thank you, everybody.